Welcome to Liz McMullen Show, episode 71. My guest is returning, Barbara Valletto. Thank you for coming back to the show.
Well, thank you, Liz. How are you?
I'm groovy. I have to warn my listeners because I live in a post-Superstorm Sandy construction zone that there is a really loud idling truck up the street. So if you hear anything in the background, I apologize, but there's nothing I can do about it. So I heard that you not only published Pulse Points, but you finished a sequel?
I did. I just finished it a couple months ago. It's actually, I submitted it to my publisher. It's Blue Feather Books.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully they'll like it, and it'll be out soon.
So, Pulse Points has a very strong paranormal element. What attracts you to that genre, and what drew you to write the story?
I've always been fascinated by the fear of the unknown and the unexplainable.
Mm-hmm.
So Pulse Points, I originally got the impression that when you think of pulse points, you think of like points on your skin that, when touched or whatever, entice you in certain ways. But I thought, what if I could do pulse points as far as a mental stream?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I worked it.
Could you explain a little bit more about this mental connection through Pulse Points?
Pulse points is someone who is able to stream in on someone else's thoughts, and it's usually a person who's in need, who needs some kind of help. And the connections have to be right, and the psyches have to be right. And once that stream is established, it's almost like they can move telepathically through each other's minds, thoughts, and feelings. And from there, the lead character gets all the information she needs to know about who this person in need is, and she'll go out and exact vengeance for this person because the person is too young or too vulnerable to do her own harm.
Have you ever read Jove Bell's Edge of Darkness?
I haven't.
Well, the reason why I bring it up is, which is actually her debut novel, which I found out during an interview with her. There is this character, and it's not a paranormal book, but it is one of the starring characters is a woman who had been abused,
Mm-hmm.
and she became a vigilante, and her method of dispatching is by whatever thing that person used to harm another person. So, or something meaningful to them. So, like in one instance, she used this man's prized katana, which is a sword, to kill him with, and he had been abusing his stepdaughter. I think either stepdaughter or daughter, one of those things. And so, you identify and understand why the vigilante does what she does, and part of you. We all have that part of us who's, kind of cheering along with the vigilante. But when another character who's not in the web of punishment gets enmeshed in this, it's much more frightening when you're like, oh, she's doing bad things to these people who did bad things, but what happens if I get in her way?
Yeah, because it's like I always, I don't think that life is black and white. There's always lots of grays, and especially when it comes to matters of the heart and emotions. So I think it's hard for some people to understand the vigilante sense, and yet others can totally understand it because sometimes law just doesn't work in the favor of the victim.
Mm-hmm. So what drew you to the schema of victims that you chose, like the ones that would be calling out for help?
The characters that were in need of help were all vulnerable. One is a young girl. Another one is a late adolescent who was abducted from an orphanage when she was 12.
Mm-hmm.
It's others have just been people that have fallen victim to assaults or
Mm-hmm.
rapes or murders.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever see or think of having the perpetrator be a same-sex offender?
In Post Points there isn't, but I wouldn't have any problem writing a character like that.
The reason why I bring it up is it's one of those really silent parts of people's lives, and you don't see it very often. Elizabeth Bishop actually did this reading for Valentine's Day. I think it was called Black and Blue, and it did include a partner that was abusive. But one of the reasons why I think it's made more quiet is, first, you don't want to bring the cops into our world, our lesbian world, and there's also the desire not to look bad in the media
Right.
as abusive. But just because you're in a same-sex relationship doesn't mean you're immune to the vigorities of life.
Exactly. I mean, I know friends that have been victims to some bad relationships. I've been fortunate, but it's not so. It's not something I like to think that we're capable of, but everyone is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and a lot of times they prey on emotions, and it could be physical, it could be emotional. It hurts all the same.
Mm-hmm.
There's no peace of mind. So yeah, I could write about it.
I was wondering, at least early in the book, why do you choose not to write the intimate scenes between two characters? Because early on with Maya and Donya, there is a romantic and like a love relationship,
Mm-hmm.
but it fades to black.
It does fade because it's kind of giving you an idea of who Maya is. I probably could have made the book longer, but I gave enough information about how she came to be this person who can stream into other people's consciousness, and how she was involved in this one relationship where the woman is older and she looks up to her not only as a teacher but as an eventual lover.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much held the intimacy kind of in check and let it expand more with other characters later on in the book.
When you were writing the first few chapters, why did you decide to jump forward in time?
Well, that was actually a suggestion by my editor,
Mm-hmm.
because I had originally started Pulse Points out with maybe without that whole beginning thing with Maya Hallworth and this older woman. It
Mm-hmm.
went right into a vengeance killing, and they felt, which I totally agreed, was that you should develop Maya's character a little bit more, let them know who she is,
Mm-hmm.
to have some empathy for her, and that's why I wrote. So actually, the first 30 pages of the book were written after the book was complete.
Mm-hmm. Also, I noticed. Well, I'm sure it's maturity that Maya spoke one way when she first met Donya, and then she sounds so much like Donya 10 years later.
Yeah, because she had, there were people that helped her, that groomed her just like they had groomed Danya, and she had quite a bit of wealth because she had inherited, and she traveled the world, and she did. She came into her own. It took her 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever think about writing? Because I know that some authors do this, writing short stories of things that either happened, quote unquote, off camera, or something that your readers wish they knew more about. Have you ever thought about doing that?
As far as me, you mean?
Yeah,
Or,
you.
I've had many people say, you really should write a book about um, my exploits as a kid, because I was such a tomboy and I've done some really weird, quirky things, and I just never. I think comedy, because it would be comedy, and it's
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to write comedy. But I've had a lot of people say you really should write about your siblings and the stuff that you did when you were a kid, and maybe one day I will.
Do you find that any of you shows up in the books that you write?
Yeah, yeah. I think that there's. I guess everyone has their pensive side, and they don't let anyone know that. And I think that a lot of the characters, not just one in particular, but many of them have traits where they're quiet, or they keep their thoughts to
Mm-hmm.
themselves. And I tend to do that a lot too. So it's easier to write it.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have any ability, any second sight, or the ability to see more than what is before the eye, so to speak?
I wish, but no. No.
Some people don't laugh.
No, I'm not laughing like that. My sister, I mean, I have people in the family that they can sense things. And I always think, I wish I could do that. I wish, they would say, oh, people have visited me that were precious to us and they had passed away, like grandparents or friends. And they'll say they see them in these little things. And I'm like, well, maybe, why don't I see them? Or why don't I feel that? And most of the time, people give me the answer of because they know you're okay and they don't need to reach out to you. So, but yeah, I would love to be able to, touch base with my grandmom again, or, a very close friend. They just don't seem to come to me that way.
Mm-hmm. My mother, we joke that she's a witch and a conjurer, because no, and I kid you not, she can wish for things, and we're talking nonverbal wishes, and even things that are random and completely unconnected to, like, like you get to know somebody, what they like or what they want or anticipate a need or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom will pop up with so many strange things. Like my partner and I went out to eat. This is when we lived in Hoboken, across the street at a restaurant that was literally on our block, and it was last minute, and we ordered food, and we had gotten this appetizer that had lobster in it. My mom loves lobster, and since we had time, and I knew that we weren't going to finish it there, we
Right.
had that in it to go. I was like, why don't I just run this over to Mom? And my mom was like, I was wishing for some lobster.
So there is some kind of a wavelength there.
I know.
It's cool though. I mean, it's really cool. I mean, one instance I can think of is my partner. I've been with her for 16 years, and when I met her, she was coming off a relationship. She had moved here from California to Philadelphia for this girl, and it didn't work out, and she was saving her money to move back. And I immediately was attracted to her, and I wanted to do anything in my power to keep her,
Mm-hmm.
make her stay. And the first night we went out to dinner, we came home to my house, and she said she sat on the couch and thought, I belong here. This is where I belong, which I thought was really freaky. And if she had probably told me it at the time, I would have been like, ah. But so, people sense things.
Mm-hmm.
Now 16 years later, she won't get off my couch. you know?
That is so funny.
But
Yeah, my partner would go walk the dog and come home with a drink that she doesn't like, and my mom's like, I was wishing for some coffee.
oh, your mom must love her.
Oh my God, it's just so funny. It's like little things, and actually recently, I took her to go. We were going to go see my grandfather, and we were coming back, and I was like, Mom, I want to go to the bank before we go home. Is that all right? And she's like, Yeah, that's fine. And there's so much construction where I live that, like, things that were a little more straightforward to get to are not as And I was like, well, since I have to go past where I want to be to backtrack to where I want to be, because like the A&P is where the TD Bank is, but we have to go past it. And I was like, well, if I have to go past it anyway, I might as well drop Mom off. And so we're driving close to the exit, and I'm like, Mom, would you like me to just drop you off first, and I'll go to the bank by myself? I was wishing you would do that. I feel kind of
That's adorable.
I know, I know, I know. So we call her a conjurer. She makes things happen.
But you seem like you have a sense for things.
I do, and what's interesting is it actually comes out in my novel as well, like different psychic things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, there are a lot of, I'd say for myself as a writer, there's a lot of me and the people who I know and love show up in the things that I write.
Yeah, you have to incorporate your life in there.
It just, I think that the creative mind, what's attached to it and what we're passionate about, what we find interesting, um, it can't help but show up in our writing.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, there's a dream sequence that happened in my book that actually stems from a dream a friend of mine had.
Okay.
And I thought the dream was kind of cool, and I was like, And so I riffed on it and I wrote two short stories relating to like the setting of the dream. And then a week or so later, when I was working on my novel, I asked her, I was like, can I use one of the short stories that I wrote? Because I think it really would fit my novel.
And isn't it funny how they can blend in? Like something you wrote 5 or 10 years ago, you can blend it into a story now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it didn't have its place, 10 years ago. You just wanted to write it. I've had that happen too, where I'm like, oh, now I know why this scene was written. I can put it right in here and it fits fine.
So, as a writer, do you like writing short fiction or do you enjoy being a novelist?
I Pulse Points is my first full length crack at fiction. I used to write short stories, lots of them. I mean, my book Night Terrors has about 22 short stories, and they're all like horror, suspense, mystery, and most of them were. I got the ideas from having nightmares. I used to have really bad nightmares when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
What better way to get them out is to write and put them into words, and that's what I did. But I like to write long fiction, but I don't want to write such long fiction that people get bored. So sometimes I try to cut it maybe shorter than it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Because I read so many books and sometimes they go on for paragraphs and paragraphs, and it's like, just say you went to the store, so, just buy the piece of gum. So, I'm finding my way in that as far as, but I do find short stories are harder to write because you're trying to get across something in maybe 5-10 pages.
Yeah.
you know. But I wish I had known then. I could have probably written every short story into a novel. Too late.
So, who are your sheroes when it comes to writers? And this could be people who write lesfic or just fiction in general. Like who are the people that kind of nudged you in the direction of writing yourself?
I like J.D. Robb. Ed McBain, he used to write the 87th Precinct series. Stephen King was always a favorite, but not his older stuff. Not his more recent stuff. His older stuff was what I liked. John Saul, Peter Straub. A lot of the horror, supernatural, psychic stuff was always what intrigued me. I wasn't really into the love stories because the girl meets the girl and gets the girl and loses the girl and maybe gets her back again. And I wanted something that when I closed it, I felt like, I was like creeped out a little bit.
Aha!
I like to be creeped out. I mean, even with movies. I mean, I don't like the horror slasher movies, but I like a movie that when it's over, I'm thinking about it.
One of the first non-slasher, make a think about it, for me, or one that just surprised the fuck out of me, was The Sixth Sense.
Well, that was creepy.
That that really was well executed. Like M. Night Shyamalan, like God bless him. It's very hard to pull off The Secret. And one of the things that I value about that movie is people who saw it did not tell others what happened.
No, they didn't, because I went in there I didn't know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? Late 90s, was it?
I think it was in the 90s. I can't remember exactly.
I mean, it's like Silence of the Lambs. That's one of my favorite movies. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's just the horror of it. The leaving yourself in the dark a little bit and then being shocked at the end.
One of the things that I like most about a good writer, or what I find to be good fiction, is when it's not predictable.
Mm-hmm.
I like being surprised.
Yeah, I like that curveball.
Yeah, totally. Oh, there was this random. I wrote down a snippet of one of the things from earlier in the novel, and it just struck me as something that I would never have thought to do, but it was very sensual, and it was insane. The insane urge to run a blade of grass across her eyelashes.
And that's so cool. That's sensual. It leads your imagination into a whole bunch of different realms.
Yeah,
Just like one sentence.
yeah. For me, there's like I used to write. I was in a long distance relationship, and when I was missing my girlfriend, I would write us together.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to write all these like little short stories, and one of the places that I love to go back to is the Deep South, even though I probably would not want to be there. But there, like I have this, there's this image that I return to a lot where, we're in the Deep South in one of those shacks, where they're playing music, maybe like some jazz or whatever, and slow dancing and very simple clothing, and then going off for a walk in the woods, and going down on a blanket, and being intimate with each other. So when I was reading that particular line, I'd never thought of doing that with a blade of grass, but it connected to that storyline that I like to write.
It's a very nice storyline.
It's so romantic.
It is.
That's one of the beauties. Like if you're a writer dating another writer, it can make for a very interesting pairing, to bridge the distance and have that innate ability to suspend disbelief.
Yeah. Does your partner write fiction too?
No, my partner and I are very different. She joked that she married me so I could do all the reading. She's a
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's a doer. Like she can fix things and make things, and she has that can-do attitude. you know, what she calls ghetto rigging things, because like even if it's not working the way, she's a problem solver.
Mm-hmm.
So she's into that, but she's absolutely she doesn't like to read. She's not interested in reading my stuff. She doesn't really get into the hows and the whys of what I do on that. But we do have one common thing, and we love history. And
Too?
when we go on vacations, we like to go on historical tours and look at homes and neighborhoods, and go on ghost tours. We love going on ghost tours. So that there's that common ground, but no, she doesn't write.
Well, that's right. You know what? If you were both the same, you'd probably kill each other. You know what I mean? I'm kind of, although she'll say she's more the free spirit, I'm more the free spirit. She keeps me very grounded, which is nice.
I think I'm in the free spirit zone as well. Though over the years as I've matured, I've tried to secure my feet to the ground.
You have to now because we have to be responsible and all that now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And learn wild things like diplomacy and patience.
But you hate that?
I've developed a phenomenal sense of ability to be patient, and as for the diplomacy, I try, like, you'd be amazed at how often I edit letters and even posts on Facebook before I set them out into the universe.
Well, that's good too.
But when I was a young woman, I would have just written whatever the hell I wanted to write.
And you didn't care what kind of repercussion there would be. It was like, this is me, and you either like it or you don't.
It's like, fuck it.
Yep. Yeah. It's a dog sometimes getting old, but we do learn to get a little bit more tactful.
Oh my God, who told us?
Sometimes.
Who told us we could grow up, Barbara? That's just not fair.
Oh.
So, let's see. You had a chance getting back together again. Well, not back together in the traditional sense, but I imagine this probably was a part of your original manuscript when Kylie and Leah bump into each other in gruesome circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
What drew you to have them together, and because the PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder thing, was pretty dramatic, and I feel very bad for Kylie that she had such an unsettling dream and then unsettling experience on her run to work off the dream.
Yeah, I mean, the poor thing. She's really had a rough go of it, but she comes back to this hometown where there is a history there between Kylie and the sheriff, whose name is Leah, and it's just she went there to recover from the traumatic ordeal, and she ends up falling into a murder scene, and then she has to confront the lover that she had years before that they didn't end on really good circumstances. So she's got a lot on her plate. But
A lot of your characters have a lot on their plate.
yeah, yeah, and it's kind of neat to see how she goes with it.
She's a little toughy, which was interesting
She's
because,
feisty. I like her to be feisty.
oh yeah, which was so funny because when I was introduced to Kylie, I was like, it almost didn't sink. You didn't see her feistiness until she was sniping with Leah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit.
You saw her vulnerable first, and then she, because she is vulnerable. But you know how it is, unresolved feelings, relationships, and stuff like that. Sometimes it can get, you know,
doesn't doesn't bring out the best in us.
Nah. So she tries to do her best, and she's the main character. She's the one I feel the most for, and I wrote the sequel because I didn't want to let her go.
Aww.
I liked her too much, so I wanted to put something else. And the other characters, in some ways, are in there too. So we'll see. Hopefully it'll be put into print.
So, what do you look for as a reader? Like, what do you read lesbian fiction?
Yes.
So, what do you like books with a series? Do you like standalone? Are you more into like the paranormal horror, or you dabble around in different things that you enjoy?
I dabble around. I love. I've read a lot of my fellow Blue Feather authors, and they're anything from the romances to a little bit of a little off the beaten path. I do like to be surprised. I like to be kept on the edge of the seat. Like if you're in a movie and you know how it is when it gets toward the end, you start reading faster because you don't want it to be over, but you want to find out what happens. And just like in watching a movie, if I finish a book and I'm still thinking about it days later, then it's made a really big impact on me.
For me, as a reader, really good books make me very attached to the characters. And it's so hard to let them go, and that even in the context of a standalone, you're like, no, I'm not ready to say goodbye to these people.
And this was a standalone. It until the very end, and I thought, oh, should I do that little twisty thing there? But I just felt there was more to tell, and there was. So I'm quite pleased with the way the sequel came out.
Oh, yay! So, how did you get into? What was your first lesbian fiction book, or how did you discover the world of lesbian fiction?
It's funny because I came out later in life. I was married. I had a 3-year-old, and I was in my mid-30s, and I had someone. I mean, I kind of knew I always was gay, but we went through the whole "this is what you're supposed to do in life," and it's hard because I was happily married, but I was missing something. I never knew what it was. So when my daughter's 3 years old and I'm 7 years into a marriage, I meet this woman and she rocks my world, and she makes me realize this is what I've been missing. This is what I've missed my whole life. And I, subsequently divorced and, ran around town for a couple of years dating and finding out all about the lesbian world. And I guess after like 3 or 4 years of dating, it didn't work out with the woman that had brought me out. But I met my partner, and I've been with her for 16 years. So my daughter's 22 now. She's on her own. I mean, it's weird how life changes.
You had your very own romance story.
I do. I mean, I've been very fortunate that in life I've been able to be loved by 2 people, and I have a fantastic daughter. So that I'm very proud of. So good things come to those who wait, I guess.
Oh.
Yeah, so it worked out pretty good.
Sounds like.
Yeah, it did.
So, dear listeners, we are very fortunate in that Barbara is willing to give away a book, a copy of Pulse Points. So if you are interested in winning a copy, make a comment on the LizMcMullenShow.com on the episode. Right beneath the video will be a place. And just by commenting, you get entered into the giveaway. And I use a number randomizer to choose the winner so that there's no playing favorites. So after you finish listening, drop a line, tell people what you think about the interview. And if you've read the book, also it'd be cool if you leave a comment and maybe give it to somebody who you dig. But I think that's a great opportunity for people to get a flavor of what you do. Is there something else that my listeners can find you in?
Actually, I do have a website. If you can spell my name, it's kind of tough. There's a lot of consonants, but it's Barbara Valletto. .com. It's BARBARAVALLETTO.com.
All right, folks, you got to go there and get with it. So, Barbara, thank you for being here for a third time on my show, and I enjoyed spending time with you.
As I did you, very much so.